Hey everyone, welcome to the Bible Project podcast. And we're continuing the story that we began yesterday from Genesis chapter 9. This unusual story where we see Noah getting drunk and the actions of his son Ham. So we're going to pick up the story at Genesis chapter 9 verse 23. But before reading that, I'd just like to remind you that the full transcript of all these podcasts is available in the episode notes of any audio version of the podcast, no matter where you download it from. Anyway, Genesis chapter 9 verse 23 tells us this. But Shem and Japheth, that's the brothers, they took a garment and laid it across their shoulders and then walked backwards, covering their father's naked body. Their faces were turned away so that they would not see their father naked. Ham, the father of Canaan, he'd gone in earlier and seen his father naked and doesn't cover him up. Rather, he goes outside and tells his brothers. By the way, the Hebrew word that is translated saw or seen when it talks about Ham looking upon Noah, the word used there means to look meticulously, to consider closely. One commentator I read said that this means that this was not an accidental glimpse. This was a fact that he gazed with intent, maybe even with a sense of self-satisfaction. So what in the world is going on here, and why does his son get cursed because of this? Obviously something going on here is not quite right. So what is not right? The main problem is that he failed to cover up his father immediately, and by doing so, that would have been seen as a shameful act upon the son. It was a disgrace because by leaving his father naked, he committed what would have been considered a gross violation of Noah's honour, and rather by immediately protecting his father's modesty, instead he went and shared the situation with his brothers. In other words, he dishonoured his father in the most profound way. I don't think we can really understand the full extent of these feelings today. But we've got to understand that this was written in another time when to come upon your fathers naked was shocking in itself, and not dealing with it appropriately would have been seen as an extremely shocking violation of family honour. In a story by the ancient author Herodias, he tells a story of a man who accidentally saw his neighbour's wife naked, and the point of the story is the husband, upon discovering it, is said to have needed to kill either the neighbour or to take his own life. It was seen that it was so much of a dishonour for a stranger to have seen her naked that it must result in either the death of himself or the neighbour who glimpsed the naked wife. And we've got to put it within that context. Ham's sin is one that shows no respect or honour for his father Noah. But worse than that, he is seen to go and tell his brothers. Now some have suggested that the way this is worded in the text, he does that with delight. He's almost gloating over the situation. One view I read said what he did was actually to make fun of his father's nakedness and uncovered state. So Ham sees his father naked, and Ham's actions dishonour Noah greatly, both as a parent, but also, as some commentators I have read, suggest that it dishonours him as head of the community and as a preacher of God. So the brothers Shem and Japheth, they take a garment, and covering their faces, they back up and they cover Noah. Thereby the brothers cover the nakedness of the fathers without even looking upon it, and in doing it that way they preserved their father's purity and they maintained respect for him. The sum of this story seems to be very simply that Ham dishonoured his father, but his two brothers should honour and respect him. But then the story takes a really tough turn. The plot thickens. The first part is about the nakedness, and that's a problem in itself trying to interpret, but that's nothing compared to the next problem, which is explaining and understanding the curse that follows. It tells us in verse 24 and 25, when Noah awoke from his wine and found out what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." In the first of these verses, Noah awakes from his wine-induced stupor and immediately knows what his son has done. Noah probably knew this because the text suggests that the garments used to cover him up were the clothes that he had normally worn and would have been discarded. It is those clothes that had been placed over him. And the next verse, as I said, it says, "Cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves will he be to his brothers." So the curse does not fall on Ham himself, but on Ham's son Canaan. Ham, of course, is the one who sinned against Noah, but the curse is seen to fall on his son. Is that fair? How do we explain that? The curse on Canaan is that he would be destined to be a servant. He's not only going to be a servant, but he's going to be what is described as a servant of servants, which means the lowest type of servant. This story is the seed of something that will come to full fruition later, something that will happen in the immediate future, something that we look at next time, and incidentally, something that is still continuing and blossoming today. And we shall look at what that is in the next podcast. Okay everyone, that's it for this time. Thank you for joining me. Now the place to go to connect to this and any other ministries I'm involved in is the podcast's notes section of the audio podcast on the Buzzsprout website, or by looking in the episode notes section on whatever app provider you use. Within that you'll not only find the transcript of each talk, but you'll also find links to all the ministries and the way to connect with us, including the Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and links both to this, the daily podcast, and the Living in Faith Everyday podcast, which is a weekly roundup of all the various Bible study and talks that I'm doing over the period of the preceding week. You'll also find links there to my SoundCloud and my Bandcamp page, where I create the background music and the sound design of these broadcasts. But with that, all I'd like to say is thank you for joining me, and I hope to join with you again very soon.